Hello and welcome into the Ballpark Digest chat, or for this edition, let's call it the Hawks Nest. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, joined by Kevin Reichard of Ballpark Digest. We're about to be joined by a man who's going to ferry us through this conversation. When we talk ballparks, when we talk rebrands, it's been a little while for Staten Island. Their last home game, we've got to go back to 2019 and all that has happened to bring them up to their home opener at Staten Island University Hospital Community Park. We are joined by the team president of the Staten Island FerryHawks, Eric Shuffler. Eric, thank you very much for taking the time.
Super excited to be here. Big fan of the website and the podcast. So really, really fun to be here.
Before we go too much further, and we're going to get into ballpark nuts and bolts, and we're going to talk about your rebrand. But first, let's show the uniform.
This is our home alternate jersey. We have grays that say Staten Island. Here's one of our hats with our, I call it the Bat Hawk. Yeah, super excited. The merchandise is flying off the racks. It is, Jesse and Kevin, it is one of the issues around building a team in the middle of COVID is supply chains really wreak havoc on everything from merchandise to refitting the stadium. Really presents a lot of extra challenges, but we are stocked, but we're doing great on merchandise sales. People love the logo. They love the name. So super excited.
Now, one thing I want to point out, Eric may be a little tired. They had their home debut last night, and we'll get into that as well. But I just want to explain that Eric's probably operating with very little sleep after a game and hours of coming down after all that adrenaline, I'm sure.
I feel like a truck hit me, from all the running around, talking to guests in the suites, making sure everyone's taken care of, checking the operations, what's working well, what needs improvement. And then obviously as a fan, the excitement of getting that first W at home.
It's so funny to me, working in baseball, that there's such a race to get to opening day. There's so much that needs to get done. And then it's like a new race begins because now your body starts to fall back into that rhythm of everything that you need to do for those home games. But Eric, getting to opening day, where do we begin? Where was your starting line to even get you to yesterday?
People ask me this question a lot, and I usually have these boring answers for them, which is a year ago, we had a field that was overgrown with weeds, a stadium that no one had played in for 2 years, that no one had taken care of really well for probably 4 or 5 years, leaks into the locker room, leaks into the dugout, leaks into the staffing areas. It would rain and we would do runs, walk through the concession stands and just find puddles everywhere. The best analogy I can give, it was as if the team went out to dinner and never came back. And you really got this stadium that was frozen in mid-step. And that was, I call it the non-sexy problems of just simply catching up on deferred maintenance and capital and putting the ballpark in a position where things actually function. Fans don't notice that. So many people are like, oh my God, this must be so fun running a baseball team. What a dream come true. And I'm the president. I also represent half the ownership group, John Katzimatidis, Red Apple Group, billionaire, successful philanthropist, represents the other half. And I'm like, this isn't really about running a baseball team right now. This is about being a building maintenance manager and then, a hiring agency and then building an entertainment and hospitality business. But the biggest major things up front were simply tackling, 5 years worth of deferred maintenance and capital at a stadium that's beautiful because it sits on the water. Kevin and Jesse, we have the best view of any ballpark in America. And I know Pittsburgh thinks they have a great view, and they do, but our view looking out at, lower Manhattan, we have the Statue of Liberty, with the ferries and these giant ships that go by. It's gorgeous, but it also means you're on the water and you take a little bit of an extra beating.
It's an easy decision to make to say, okay, we have to fix the leaks. What were the hardest decisions that you had to make in getting the ballpark ready?
I think there's a couple things that are really hard. And it's funny because you could spend days going over the logo. You could spend days going over the color scheme because everyone has an opinion. I think the hardest thing on the stadium itself, we did the turf. And with our city partner, New York City Economic Development Corporation, we put in a new field. And keeping that on a timeline to make sure we were open for opening day our team opened with a 12-game road trip because, I told the league, I said, I need as much time as possible to make sure we have a field. So, basically ripping up a field, putting in drainage and installing a new turf, in a short timeline, that was really hard. I think one of the other challenges that related to the stadium was you have no predictability on delivery and timelines. Between what COVID's done to shipping and just what's going on with how difficult it is, not just for you to hire, but for vendors to hire, you really don't have any predictability or certainty around when people can come and make repairs. And that just creates wild cards all over the place.
Well, about that, because you mentioned the supply chain, I know that the Durham Bulls took forever to receive their uniforms this year. There were teams in my Midwest League who didn't get baseball caps, and they had to try to figure things out. How are you hampered by supply chain specifically?
Massively. Some of it's supply chains, and some of it's just companies aren't getting the job done from a competence level, and that caught me off guard. How hard it was to engage with certain vendors to get what we need. So, we didn't have belts and socks arrive till probably game 7 or 8. Our hats didn't arrive. They were stuck on a boat in China. There were some other problems I won't get into, but that was stunning how you can be thinking everything's on schedule and being told on everything's on schedule until one day you wake up and it's not. And that's really frustrating because, from the team perspective, whether you're the Staten Island FerryHawks or a team in the Midwest League, it's your players. You are embarrassed in front of your players. And that to me is the biggest problem with this is, we're working our asses off to make commitments and deliver a product, but you're relying on vendors and other people to deliver things on a timely basis. And that makes you vulnerable. And when players don't have their uniforms, they're understanding, but at the end of the day, they blame you. And that is really frustrating. We got our mascot 3 days before the home opener, or before the season started, which I'm grateful for, because there was a time I wasn't sure that was going to happen. But, a lot of it's getting on the phone with other CEOs of these companies. We're a new team. You know how important that mascot is. You need him out at schools and events. And I'm grateful we had him for 3 days, but it would have been nice to have him for 3 weeks. Not having uniforms affects things like when you do your media day, when you do a uniform reveal. There's all these unintended consequences of products not getting to you in time that affects your marketing, especially as a new team. But even for those existing teams, you can't get out in the community on certain things until you have certain products in hand.
Kevin?
I was going to shift a little bit to the ballpark issues that you had. I've been there a couple times actually, and you're right. It is a gorgeous view of the Manhattan skyline, the waterfront, the ferry rolling in. But it was just abandoned. So what's the one biggest physical issue you had to deal with? And then 2, talk a little bit about the shift in emphasis to events as a real catalyst for you, because the SI Yankees didn't really do a whole lot of events. They said they would, but they didn't. And I know the New York economic people were big on this being a year-round venue, hosting a wide variety of events besides baseball.
All right, let me make sure I get both of them. So the first one, by far the turf was the biggest because it's the most noticeable. And if you don't get that done, nothing else matters. I think second, getting outfield walls done. And Petty, we're having safety netting extended. We didn't make it. The vendor couldn't get it done. We ordered it months in advance, so it'll get done probably after the first homestand. So, but getting the outfield walls, because just something simple like getting an outfield wall means you got to sell it. You've got to get the vendor to give you artwork and design. You've got to get the vendor then to produce it and get it shipped here. Like our outfield walls had a traffic accident on their way up, and they had to get sent back to get re-inspected. So those were 2 of the biggest ones, because you focus on what's fan facing and you want to make sure you get as much of that right as possible. I think for us also, the sheer magnitude of how many things had to be replaced. I'm not an engineer and I'm not a facilities guy, but boilers, furnaces, elevators, all those items were at the end of their life and had basically been neglected. So, you're repairing those, you're replacing those. We get a nor'easter that would hit and it would flood out certain items that would then have to come and get replaced because we're still in the process of fixing leaks. So it was the magnitude of the little things, and they all take time. So that was probably it. But the outfield walls and the turf, our LED ribbon is still trying to get put up to speed. Our scoreboard, we're working through some issues. Like, you can try and you can plan, but God intervenes, and sometimes the baseball gods have a life of their own. But you roll with it. In terms of year round, it is important. My partner John Katsimatidis is a master marketer. He owns a media empire, and from day one he has been very strong on, this is not about baseball. Like, the goal is to build a year-round sports and entertainment complex with this amazing view. I think in defense of the former team, and there's a lot I could criticize, it's really hard. The business of bringing in outside events is a challenge, especially in New York City. So we've got about a half dozen graduations planned already for June. That's probably 5 or 6 more than they had before. And what's great about graduations is we'll bring 15,000 fans into the stadium for graduation who will see the stadium and habit of attendance. They'll see, hey, this is easy to get to. The stadium looks great. They'll come back for a game. We're working on some college sports. We have Wagner, St. John's, and College of Staten Island, all Division I, or just College of Staten Island's Division III. All high-level baseball programs. We can get them in there. But 2 things really matter for the year round. One is you got to get the youth sports. You can get those little leagues and high schools in there. Staten Island takes their youth sports really seriously. The biggest one, and when I talk to fans on Staten Island, what they're excited about baseball, but they're really excited when I talk about concerts and entertainment. So when you couple that venue and those sight lines with concerts and food festivals or beer festivals, it's really going to create something great. Admittedly, getting those in year one is hard. We didn't have a turf. People were like, really, you're going to actually pull this off? So they're skeptical, but I expect a really robust 2023 sports and entertainment. And we're partnered with a radio station who has its own line of talent, which gives us built in some other access. So we have some unique assets, as we kind of get through this year.
Eric, you installed brand new seating too, right?
That's in year 2. So that's a 2023 project. If you want breaking news here. We kind of broke up the turf and the seating. I made a decision to try and get both of those done. Was probably not doable, nor a good idea. So we've been engaged with the EDC on what that's going to look like. And that is going to be really, really exciting because it's another really fan-friendly amenity for the stadium for next season.
You mentioned the nor'easter. What kind of obstacle did the weather present this winter?
It actually, fortunately, did not affect the turf schedule. I was really grateful about that. But there was 1 or 2 really bad nor'easters that flooded out the elevators. And then they all had to go and be kind of repaired, at a pretty significant manner. So the weather creates an obstacle in terms of the impact it has on the mechanical equipment and the damage it can wreak on them, causing them to have to get repaired often multiple times.
Go ahead.
No, I say the good news is, we'll have gone through such a pretty significant repair cycle at the end of year 1 that a lot of our equipment moving forward will be in a different phase of life than what we've been dealing with before. I mean, some of the pictures and stuff we have of the equipment, I say in the locker room, we had to replace the locker room carpet, everything, because it was just, years of leaks and all had taken its obvious toll. The batting cage, we had to rip up all the turf, but the first thing you have to do before you rip up the old turf, which it really wasn't even breathable in the room, was, every time it would rain, we'd send guys down there to look at where the leaks were coming in and then reverse engineer where are they starting from and then go plug them. And then once that's done, you start the process of ripping out the turf and replacing it. But you got to fix the leaks before you can replace anything.
Now, just so people have an understanding of the ballpark a little bit, it opened in 1999, correct?
2001.
2001, approved back then and then
Yep.
open. So we're still dealing with a facility that's 20 plus years old.
Yep.
And you were looking at total end of life stuff there. I mean, HVAC systems aren't glamorous, elevator repairs aren't glamorous, but that's where I'm sure a big chunk of the renovation budget went to.
Unfortunately, when people saw some of the early articles about the millions of dollars the city was spending, it's like, it's not like we're putting in tiki bars all over the place. I mean, it's getting these mechanicals, but the stadium doesn't function without it, and what's hard is being on the water, it just takes an extra everything, our electrical systems, our scoreboard paneling, it's all 50 feet from the water. So those things get pummeled.
I want to get into marketing and your branding, because you mentioned the marketing had to be pushed back until the uniforms were ready, but let's go through your branding story. How did you get to FerryHawks?
It's one of my favorite stories. Early on, John Katzimatidis and I made this decision that we think one of the challenges the former team faced was a little too reliant on the Yankee brand. And they did this alternative name of the Pizza Rats, which sold a lot of merchandise, but really alienated a good portion of the borough and the elected officials and the Yankees. Really, it became a real source of contention. So we made this early commitment that we were going to come up with a team name that was very positive of Staten Island and very unique to Staten Island, because we're all in on Staten Island and we had to have something that the community felt really good about. So we really opened it up to the fans. And friends of mine were like, okay, what's the kind of the inside name? We're going through this process. Like, no, really, I'm not sure where the name's going to end up. I always felt it would end up like a first responder public service. The island has a very strong history of law enforcement, civil service, sanitation department, police and fire. The 9/11 impact proportionally on Staten Island was worse than anywhere else. We opened it up to the public and we got 2,000 submissions, which I went through every one of them multiple times. We narrowed it down to 7 finalists, of which 5 finalists were first responder related. There was one that I really loved from the beginning called Harbor Heroes, which I always felt was going to be the name. And we had a lot of, it's the Staten Island Ferry is the iconic part of Staten Island. And there was a lot of names around ferry. There was a lot of also animal names on Staten Island, including hawks. I just felt like naming the team the Ferries or the Ferry Boats was a little lame. So I love how minor league baseball combines names. I think it's a great part of minor league baseball. So I was kind of going through options with ferry plus something else of all the different animals on Staten Island. And FerryHawks sounded the best. It flowed well. So I was like, all right, let's just put this into the 7 finalists. And as soon as we opened it up to fan voting, like it wasn't even close. It was like 2-1 over, Harbor Heroes. And when I was out and about, like giving speeches and all, and you're always doing it. I'm in politics in my other life. So you're always trying to do market research in person. It wasn't like people, especially families and kids, love FerryHawks. It just sounded fun. It sounded Staten Island. And we did several rounds of voting. And each time we did a round of voting, FerryHawks by far was the leader. And then, what we did from there is then it's the logo development. And I want to give a shout out to Sky Dillon, who was just amazing, both in terms of his ability to capture what we wanted and his response time. We wanted a logo that represented Staten Island. So we wanted a hawk that was tough, but fun. And you see the Verrazano bridges in it, an image of the Staten Island Ferry. It's very unique to us. And that's really important.
Wait, Eric, go back to the hat.
So this is our bat hawk. We have several versions of the hawk. Let me see if I have the other one. I only have the bat hawk at my desk. So we have, wait, hold on. So can you guys see this? So that's our flying, this is our inaugural season special logo. And we have a flying hawk, which maybe I'll find before we get off the podcast and show a picture, but people love the merchandise. I just wish we could get more of it in quicker.
Why those colors?
The orange is from the ferry. So that was kind of an easy one. And the Carolina blue is it's a really hot color. And we are trying to create a brand that is exciting and new and young. And, Carolina blue was recommended to us by our shirt vendor. He's like, this is a hot color. We're starting to see it really pick up. We have a focus group of some of the staff's kids who are teenagers. Remember, teenagers drive the market. and they all really like Carolina blue. So, and the Carolina blue and the orange really work well together.
How much did it feel good to finally go, we have gear, we have stuff to show you of how we're going to look?
Yeah, it's one of those, when you get the team name announced, because you're always nervous, that's great. But then you start to see the gear and you get super excited. But that's another, you could spend days going over gear. And where do you lose time? You lose time because, your senior management can't agree on what a design should look like. And everyone's got an opinion. And I don't think good decisions come by 7 people ending up compromising so as to not alienate people. So at the end of the day, someone's got to step in and make a decision and drive things. But we love the merchandise. Designing it was super fun. But it's also another thing that's overwhelming. Like you could spend okay, we need 7 t-shirts. Do you want long sleeve? Do you want short sleeve? Do you want dry fit? You want to use your SI logo? Which hawk do you want to use? Which hawk do you want to use on which logo? Sometimes you're like, just mix it up, get them out there. People just want to buy stuff and wear stuff. But it's amazing what people don't realize about this business is how nuanced every decision has layers. And we're like, oh my God, how hard could it be to pick out merchandise? I'm like, it's really hard. Everyone's like, oh, use this logo or that logo. What if you use this logo? It should be on a white shirt as opposed to a gray shirt or a black shirt. Every one of those is a decision point.
I imagine the law of diminishing returns enters a great deal in these processes, doesn't it?
I often say to people, we're done. Decide. We are not designing the Mona Lisa here. Pick a shirt color. We need to get it ordered because you lose time. And the vendors, they work with you, but they have their own opinions also. But you're completely right, Kevin. At some point, you've got to make decisions and move on and hope you're making most of them correctly. But you need to make decisions.
So this brings us to opening night in terms of your home opening night. Did it go how you hoped it would go?
Yes, it was better than I hoped it would go. One, we got a win, and we kind of started off with a brutal road trip where we went winless. So getting that first win at home, extra special, but really good for the team. Opening day, you don't know what to expect, and everyone in this business tells you, listen, there's a lot you're going to fix, stuff's going to go wrong. Our scoreboard malfunctioned. We spent all day trying to get it correct. So that's kind of like a big one. And we were able to jerry rig enough to make something work, but not what we wanted. Opening day, I think, was a huge success. We had a really great turnout. It was brutally cold. It's still tough up here in the Northeast, weather-wise. The fans, it was a couple things really noticeable to me. The intensity of the fans, these are New York baseball fans. This is not a casual experience for them. So they were really into it. I'm a Mets season ticket holder, and the same level of intensity was there with people yelling on the field and cheering for the fans. So that's really heartening. We went cashless, which is kind of the emerging trend. That went fairly smoothly. Parking went fairly smoothly. Operationally, you're always looking at what we can improve. But by and large, for the first night in a stadium that hadn't been used in almost 3 years, a huge success capped off by a win, which was super exciting. We had some awesome guests. Borough president was there. Roger Clemens' son plays on the team, so he was there watching his son play, who came about 3 inches from a home run to straightaway center field that ended up as a triple. Kelsey Whitmore, who's made history, as the first woman to start a game in the Atlantic League, got in as a pinch runner and scored a critical insurance run for us in the 8th. So all in all, huge success. But like everything else, you wake up the next day, no victory lap. It's what do we have to do better to create this better fan experience? And going to the point about the actual ballpark, you've got your operational side, but it's right from a physical point of view, the scoreboard, and we got people there again this morning working on that. But it's what works. Someone made a suggestion of the elevators. You got to level out the floor in the elevator. So you do a debrief. You start talking to everyone and figuring out operationally what do we do better, physically in the stadium what has to get improved.
I'll tell a quick Casey Clemens story. So Casey Clemens, who's now a FerryHawk, he was with my Lansing Lugnuts several years back. Love him. He would get on the team bus and high five everybody. Me, trainer, every single player, the bus driver, just a great guy. Hit a home run with Roger in attendance and waved to him as he rounded the bases. So I love seeing him as a FerryHawk. And then Kelsey Whitmore, to start a game, to pinch run and score run in your home opener. What's it been like having Kelsey on the squad?
So let me first make a comment on Casey.
Yes.
What's most amazing about Casey is how nice he is. He is an incredibly nice, well-raised young man. And we're
Yes.
very fortunate. You know, several people told me, like, you really don't want to have jerks in the locker room. It can create a lot of problems. We don't have any. We have such a good group of nice players. And, you know, Casey's just a really good kid, a good young man. You know, I think what I like to say about Kelsey is a baseball player who happens to be a woman. And that's the way to watch how the team interacts with her. They treat her like another player. And, you know, I think some of the pitching coaches are really working with her to develop her game. This is a big jump for her to go to where she's been, to playing at essentially a double and triple A level. So her pitching's coming along, and I'm eager to see her out there on the mound. And I think that'll happen soon. But the best thing I see about Kelsey, well, it's really two things. One, her interaction with her teammates, like, she's another player, and that's great. And second is when we're on the road, and I've been to most of the road games, I make a point to get to every road trip, is, you know, this organic support for her when you're on the road. You know, you hear these young female voices, you know, we want Kelsey, or just these little 8-year-old girl voices cheering Kelsey, Kelsey. And, you know, for the future of the game, that's really important. And I think Kelsey understands and accepts, you know, that part of her being here. But, you know, Kelsey's a baseball player who wants to get better at playing baseball. And that is pretty cool. Like, she's a gamer.
I also think it's interesting. The Staten Island Yankees are New York Penn League. Affiliated ball, Yankees control the players. These are FerryHawks in the Atlantic League. So I worked in the Can-Am League and the Frontier League. And so I got to see in the independent league, who you are matters. And the fans get to know your players.
Yeah.
And the players get to know the fans. And those relationships matter. It's such a different thing. Whereas in affiliated ball, you just never know if a guy's going to go up or down the ladder.
Correct. And you also have the chance to bring in a lot of local players.
Yes.
Which is really, so we have, you know, Kevin Krause was a star at Tottenville High School on Staten Island and was, you know, a top prospect in the Pirates organization. You know, he's playing with us now as his hometown guy. He's a phenomenal hitter. You obviously talked about Kelsey and Casey. I think we got 5 or 6 players from New York City. So for them, their families get to come out and see them. Their friends get to see them. Ben Ruda, one of our outfielders, you know, is in the Yankee system, played at Wagner College, is from Central New Jersey. Like, all that matters. It matters from a marketing perspective. Like, we're trying to build a baseball winner, but we're also trying to build a baseball success so we can be here year after year. And that ability to bring in local players and make the community see that these players are, you know, kids they watched in high school or college, or their friends and family, to be able to come out and watch them. It's really one of the things I love about being independent league. You know, I was at first like, oh, you know, I want to be involved in an affiliated team. But the more I've kind of gotten into this from both an economic point of view and an ability to have control point of view, you know, these partner leagues, and the Atlantic League in particular, because of its reputation, is really a great place to be.
Kevin?
Yeah, I was going to say that the partner leagues are really revitalized after the MLB makeover of minor league baseball. It's really interesting. And instead of sort of scaling back, man, the Atlantic League, the Pioneer League, and I'm having lunch today with the commissioner of the American Association, who's all prime. Josh is just, you know, just all a twiver for the season to start. It's great to see this life in baseball, and honestly, you know, some affiliated owners are sort of going through the paces, but man, partner league team owners like you kind of kicking butt these days.
Yeah, listen, it's a grind, don't get me wrong, but I think the thing is, in the partner leagues, listen, I'll bet on myself and, you know, my team every day, and we are in control of our own destiny, win or lose, right? And that's a good place to be. And, you know, our ability to control our costs and control how we market and how we invest in the community, I like that. And having the partner league MLB designation, you know, adds some credibility to the league. You know, Rick White is an amazing, you know, league president. He's super helpful. What Frank Bolton built with the Atlantic League. But there's a lot of new owners in the Atlantic League, some of whom have affiliated experience, some of whom are just, you know, kind of business leaders, like Brandon down in Gastonia, you know, Andy Shea, who has a couple teams. So I think the Atlantic League's future is really bright. You know, but in the end of the day, it's about, you know, how do I get people into the ballpark when I can't rely on Pete Alonso, you know, or Garrett Cole? you got to hustle.
So just in wrapping up, that hustle from last year to last night, Kevin, any final thoughts?
No, I've been lucky enough to, Eric and I have communicated quite a bit since the team was announced, and watching this team come back from from nothing to a great ballpark. By the way, I think people are really going to like going out there again, and to see you guys thriving with a good crowd last night, even though the weather isn't cooperating. I think it really bodes well, and there's a new dynamic set of owners coming into baseball, and I'm glad to say that you're part of that.
Thank you. And Kevin, I appreciate the dialogue back and forth. I realize the value of organizations like yourself, of what you do to promote the game and to promote teams. So that's why I will always make the investment in time, for you and Jesse. Selfishly, I also enjoy reading. When I was first starting this journey, the way I got smart was I read a lot, and I talked to a lot of people, and I saw what other teams were doing. I'd read something that was on the website, and I'd call an owner up and say, hey, I saw this on the website. Here's who I am. Can you help me? I think what's great about minor league baseball, the community of people, like, everybody wants you to succeed. Everybody gets, if one of you fail, that hurts all of us. So people have been super generous in their time, and Ballpark Digest was a great way for me to see interesting things others were doing and try and I still look at it, when I'm looking for stadium ideas, it's helpful. Like, everyone really is in this together, and the ability of the website and podcast to share knowledge, super helpful for all of us out here.
Well, thank you.
On that note, Staten Island FerryHawks team president Eric Shuffler, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys. Go FerryHawks, go Atlantic League.
I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler for Kevin Reichard. Kevin, any final thoughts?
I have no final thoughts. I'm so looking forward to getting out there this summer, probably late June, early July, in that time frame, and I will witness it firsthand. Eric,
we'll give you a tour, take you through the locker room, show you, where everything was and wasn't, and share some of the more horrific moments of building this out that I do not share publicly.
I look forward to it.
Visit and subscribe ballparkdigest.com. This has been the Ballpark Digest Chat.